The morning air in the small town of Havenwood, Georgia, was fresh, carrying the scent of newly cut grass and the sound of clear laughter. Michael Gable lay on his back on the lush green lawn, lifting his 4-year-old daughter Chloe into the air. "Higher, Daddy," she squealed with delight, her blonde hair shimmering in the morning sun. Amelia, his wife, smiled gently from the porch, fanning herself with a paper fan to ward off the early summer heat. Beside her, their 10-year-old son, Leo, stood in his baseball uniform, his expression unusually serious. "Dad, I have a big game today," Leo said, his voice full of determination. "You'll be there, right?" Michael laughed, setting Chloe down and dusting off his pants. He walked over and ruffled Leo's hair. "Of course, champ. I wouldn't miss you hitting a home run for the world." He turned to kiss Amelia on the forehead, wrapping his arms around all three of them. "I love you all," he whispered. "I'm just running to the hardware store to grab a few things for this weekend's project. I'll be back long before your game, Leo." They watched his pickup truck roll down the gravel driveway, smiles still lingering on their faces. It was a picture-perfect family moment, a peaceful scene that no one could have imagined was about to be shattered into a million pieces. At 10:17 a.m., as Amelia was preparing water and towels for Leo's game, her phone rang with an unknown number. A sense of dread crept into her chest. "Hello? Hello, is this Mrs. Amelia Gable?" a strange, flat voice asked. "I'm calling from the County General Hospital." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong? My husband. Is he okay?" "We're very sorry." The voice hesitated. "There's been an incident. Can you please come to the hospital immediately?" At the hospital, the cold air and the smell of disinfectant overwhelmed Amelia, making her dizzy. A doctor with a tired, sad face was waiting for her, Mrs. Gable. He began, his voice low. "I'm so sorry to have to tell you this. Your husband did not survive a sudden massive heart attack. We did everything we could." "No," Amelia whispered, her ears ringing. "No, that's impossible. He was perfectly fine this morning." She felt the ground crumble beneath her feet. Her world, in the span of a single phone call, had gone completely silent. That evening, the house once filled with laughter was submerged in a terrifying silence. Leo sat motionless, his eyes glued to a blank wall. Chloe had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, but Amelia was an empty shell, a statue of grief. A single question twisted in her mind. Why just 7 days after the funeral, the pain was still too raw, too sharp? The house that had once been so full of life now echoed like an empty drum. Amelia spent her days sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, her lifeless eyes staring at her and Michael's wedding photo. Leo, older than his years, remained silent. Chloe kept asking questions no one could answer. And then one morning a knock came at the door, heavy and final. Amelia opened it. Before her stood Michael's 2 older brothers, Richard and David. Their faces held not a shred of sympathy. "Amelia," Richard said bluntly, his voice as cold as ice, "you don't belong here anymore." She blinked, not believing her ears. "What do you mean? This house belongs to the Gable Family Trust." David interjected, his voice dripping with malice. "Michael was our brother. You took his life. You won't take his house." "Took his life?" Amelia stammered, one shock piling onto another. "You think we don't know?" David sneered. "We know what kind of woman you are. A gold digger. You drained him of his energy and his money. The stress you caused is what killed him." The words were like knives stabbing into Amelia's already bleeding heart. It was a cruel and absurd accusation, but it was delivered with a terrifying certainty. So where are we supposed to go?" she asked weakly. "Enough," Richard roared. "You're not to take anything from this house. Leave today. If you want, you can leave the children. We'll take care of them." "No," Amelia replied, a strength she didn't know she possessed suddenly rising within her. "I will go, but I will go with my children. They've already lost their father. You will not take their mother from them, too." A few hours later, she closed the door to her home, holding only a handbag with a few personal items. Beside her were two bewildered children. They had nowhere to go. Standing on the sidewalk, looking back at the house that was once their home, Amelia felt like more than a widow. She was an exile condemned and cast out by her late husband's own family. Amelia couldn't bring herself to call her parents. The shame was too great. How could she explain that she, a woman who had had everything, was now destitute and falsely accused by her own in-laws? So she just walked. Night fell on Havenwood, bringing with it the chirping of crickets and the chill of the evening mist. The pale yellow streetlights cast the long shadows of the mother and her two children on the cracked pavement. Chloe had fallen asleep on her mother's shoulder, her small arms wrapped around Amelia's neck, her weight growing heavier by the minute. Leo trudged behind, silent as a shadow. His silence was more terrifying than any accusation. "Mom, where are we going?" Leo finally asked, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and fear. Amelia took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice from trembling. "Where God leads us, son," she replied, though she herself had no faith left at that moment. "Just not here, not with those people." She began knocking on doors. First, the shabby motels along the highway where flickering neon lights illuminated her weary face. "Sorry, no vacancy," or a cold shake of the head was all she received. She tried a late-night diner asking if they needed a dishwasher. "We're not hiring," the manager said without looking up from his ledger. Each rejection was like a needle pricking her pride. But for her children's sake, she kept going. "I can do anything," she pleaded with a woman watering plants on her porch. "Cleaning, babysitting, cooking. I just need a corner where my children can sleep for the night." The woman looked her up and down with suspicion before retreating inside and slamming the door. Finally, when their legs were aching and hope had nearly faded, they found temporary shelter behind an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. The smell of damp and garbage filled the air. Amelia spread her only jacket on the cold concrete floor for Chloe to lie on. She sat down, pulling Leo into her arms, the three of them huddling together in the darkness. "Mom, are we going to die here?" Leo whispered, his voice trembling with fear and hunger. "No," Amelia answered, her voice firm though her heart was breaking. "As long as I'm breathing, you will be okay." Around midnight, two bright headlights cut through the darkness, followed by the sound of a truck engine shutting off. A woman got out, followed by a large-framed man. Amelia immediately stood up, shielding her children. "Please wait," she called out, her voice pleading. "We mean no harm. I'm not a thief." The couple stopped, surprised. "I'm just a mother." Amelia continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. "My children are hungry. Please give me a job, anything. I don't want a handout, just a chance to live with dignity." The woman, whose name was Eleanor, stepped closer. She had a kind face and compassionate eyes. She looked at Amelia's face, her wrinkled clothes, and the two shivering children behind her. "What's your name?" Eleanor asked gently. "Amelia. These are Leo and Chloe." The man, Frank, Eleanor's husband, frowned. "Eleanor, we can't just take in every stray," he grumbled, his voice full of skepticism. But Eleanor didn't take her eyes off Amelia. "She's not a beggar, Frank," she whispered. "She has her pride. Look at her eyes." Then Eleanor turned and gently opened the back door of the truck. "Get in. We have a small guest house in the backyard. It's nothing fancy, but it has a roof." The tears Amelia had been holding back for so long finally broke free. She was speechless, able to only nod in infinite gratitude. She carried Chloe and helped Leo into the truck. That night, for the first time since being thrown out of her home, Amelia was able to bathe her children in warm water, tuck them into a clean blanket, and watch them sleep peacefully without fearing the coming dawn. The guest house was small but clean, with an old bed, a small bathroom, and an electric stove. To them, at that moment, it was paradise. The very next morning, before the sun rose, Amelia was awake. She swept the yard, cleaned every window of the main house, and scrubbed the pots until they shone. She worked tirelessly with a quiet determination to prove that Eleanor's kindness had not been misplaced. Weeks turned into months, and the seasons began to change. Eleanor and Frank, who owned a small construction company, officially gave her a job cleaning and helping around the house. They bought Leo and Chloe new uniforms and enrolled them in the local school. Leo threw himself into his studies with the fury of someone who had been robbed of everything. He knew the only way out of this poverty was through knowledge. Chloe, now with food and a safe roof over her head, slowly rediscovered her smile and her innocence. Amelia gradually found a rhythm, even if it was a life lived on her knees. Every morning she woke in the pre-dawn darkness, prepared breakfast, served the family, and then retreated silently to the backyard like a faithful shadow. She told herself, "As long as my children are fed and sleep safely, I can endure anything." The seasons passed in Frank and Eleanor's home, and a fragile but precious peace was established. Eleanor treated Leo and Chloe almost as her own. "These two children are gems," she often told her friends. "If God had given me children, I would have wished for them to be just like this." 10 years is a long time, long enough for the deepest scars to fade, long enough to plant hope in the soil of despair. The small house behind the Petersons' property had become a true home. Under Eleanor's care and Frank's quiet protection, the Gable children had grown up. Leo, now a 20-year-old man, was the pride of the family. He had earned a full scholarship to Emory University, majoring in engineering, and was praised by his professors as an exceptional talent. Every weekend he came home. His eyes burned with the fire of determination, the fire of a young man who swore to pull his family out of the shadow of the past. He worked tirelessly, not just at school, but also taking on jobs during breaks, saving every penny with the dream of buying a small house for his mother and sister. Chloe, 14, had blossomed into a quiet and graceful young woman. She had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. She loved books and would spend hours in the town library, losing herself in other worlds to forget her own. Eleanor adored her like a daughter, often taking her shopping and sharing girlish secrets. Amelia had found a certain peace in the routine. She woke before dawn, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, and disappeared into the backyard like a faithful ghost. Her joy was simple, watching her children grow up healthy with a bright future ahead of them. The pain of losing Michael was still there, but it had become a part of her, a dull ache rather than an open wound. She told herself her sacrifices were worth it. It was a sweltering Thursday afternoon. Frank was mending the fence in the backyard. Amelia brought him a glass of iced tea. Everything was as normal as it had been for the past 10 years. Suddenly, Eleanor's car pulled into the driveway at an unusual speed. She got out, looking annoyed. "I forgot the important files again," she grumbled, as she walked past Amelia without a glance, heading straight into the house. A few seconds later, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the master bedroom, shattering the afternoon's tranquility. "What is this?" Amelia, startled, dropped the tray. She and Frank exchanged a horrified look and ran inside. The scene before them made Amelia's blood run cold. Eleanor was standing in the middle of the bedroom, her finger pointing at the unmade bed. Strewn carelessly on the sheets were Frank's wallet and the hair clip Amelia had dropped while cleaning the room that morning. "What is this?" Eleanor shrieked, her voice breaking with rage and pain. She turned to Frank, her eyes blazing. "Your wallet and her hair clip. On my bed." "Eleanor, honey, it's not what you think." Frank stammered, his face pale. But Eleanor was beyond listening. Jealousy and a sense of betrayal had transformed her into someone else entirely. She turned on Amelia, her eyes filled with contempt. You shameless woman, I picked you up off the street, gave you a home, raised your children as my own, and this is how you repay me, by sleeping with my husband in my own bed." "No, ma'am, I swear." Amelia tried to explain, but her words were drowned out by Eleanor's screams. "Get out of here! Get out now! You and your bastard children, get out of my house!" She began throwing their clothes out onto the lawn. The uniforms, the books, the old toys, 10 years of their lives were tossed onto the grass without a second thought. Amelia knelt, pleading through her tears. But it was useless. The door was slammed shut. Once again they were on the street with only the clothes on their backs. But this time the pain was magnified 100-fold. Leo and Chloe, just home from school, stood frozen at the sight. Leo approached his mother, his face a tight mask, his eyes no longer holding their usual admiration but a terrifying coldness. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked, his voice a hiss. "You slept with him." Amelia flinched. She hadn't expected the cruelty in her own son's voice. "Leo, it's not what you think," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Then explain it." Leo shouted, the rage he had suppressed for so long exploding. "Explain why Eleanor threw us out like beggars. Explain why we've lost everything again. Was it worth it, Mom? Was it worth being thrown out on the street for this?" "You don't understand, Leo. It's because of you that we're in this mess." He roared, his words like daggers in her heart. "You've shamed us. You've disgraced this family." Amelia looked at her son. She saw in his eyes the same fire, the same merciless judgment she had seen in Richard's and David's eyes 10 years ago. "I'm leaving," Leo declared decisively. "I'm going back to Havenwood. I'm going to take back what's ours. I won't let my life be ruined by your shame." Chloe, who had been silent until now, spoke up, her voice as cold as ice. "I'm going with him." Amelia turned to her daughter, her heart shattering. "Chloe, sweetie, please stay with me. You're all I have left." "I'm tired, Mom," Chloe replied, refusing to meet her eyes. "I don't want to keep running. I don't want to be the daughter of the woman everyone points at." Without another word, the two siblings turned their backs and started walking, leaving Amelia alone on the sidewalk, surrounded by the wreckage of her life. She watched her children's figures recede into the distance, feeling as if her very soul was being torn in two. She had lost her husband, her home, her dignity, and now she had lost the children she had sacrificed everything to protect. Havenwood hadn't changed much in 10 years. The houses still sat peacefully under ancient oak trees, and the air still smelled of damp earth and magnolias. But for Leo and Chloe, the town felt foreign, as if they were stepping into a forgotten memory. When they arrived at the gate of the large Gable family home, Richard, the uncle they barely remembered from old photographs, was already waiting. His hair had turned salt and pepper, but his smug demeanor remained the same. He opened his arms wide. "My dear niece and nephew, you've finally come home," he said dramatically, hugging each of them. "This is your home. You are not strangers here. Your father would be so proud." Leo just nodded stiffly, feeling uncomfortable with the overly warm, artificial welcome. Chloe stood behind her brother, silent and wary. "Come inside," Richard said. "Rest, have something to eat. Then we'll talk." He led them to a small guest house behind the main property, which had been cleaned for them. That evening they sat in the yard under the silver moonlight. Richard took a deep breath before beginning his well-rehearsed speech. "You are Michael's children, and as such, you are entitled to everything he left behind: the land, this house, the savings accounts. But," he paused for dramatic effect, "it's complicated. Inheritance here isn't as simple as in the city. It takes time, it takes patience, and most importantly, it requires the cleansing of ties." "Cleansing of ties?" Leo asked, frowning. "Yes," Richard said, his voice dropping to a mysterious low tone. "What your father left behind isn't just physical property. There are spiritual ties that need to be put in order. We need to protect ourselves, do things the right way, and ensure that nothing stands in the way of your future." Leo and Chloe looked at each other. For the first time in days, they felt respected, given back a dignity they thought they had lost. Richard's words, though vague, planted a seed of hope in their hearts. Meanwhile, Amelia, with nowhere else to go, had finally returned to Havenwood. She went back to her childhood home, now dilapidated and empty after her parents' death. The women in town who once knew her as a vibrant young woman now looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. "Look, the one who came back through the back door," they whispered to each other at the market. "I hear even her own children won't look at her. She's the one who brought shame to the Gable bloodline." Amelia would sometimes see her children at the market or on the street. They never spoke to her. Leo would turn his head away. Chloe would pretend not to see her. Each time her heart twisted in pain. And then one morning the final tragedy unfolded. The market was bustling with the sounds of vendors and haggling when Leo appeared. He stood on an empty wooden crate with Chloe by his side, her arms crossed, her expression as cold and rehearsed as she had been taught. "Everyone listen to me." Leo shouted, his voice echoing, cutting through the market's noise. Everyone stopped, turning to look curiously. Leo pointed a finger directly at Amelia, who stood frozen a few steps away. "That woman is our mother," he declared, "but she is no longer worthy of that name. She is the one who destroyed our family. She is the one who tarnished our name. She is the one who was caught in the bed of a married man. It is because of her that our father cannot rest in peace. She is the curse of this bloodline." A murmur spread through the crowd. Amelia stood motionless. She looked directly into her son's eyes, her own gaze unwavering, but inside she was dying. Leo, panting, finished. "She is nothing to us anymore." With that, he turned on his heel. Chloe gave her mother one last emotionless glance and followed her brother. The crowd began to buzz with gossip, their stares like daggers piercing Amelia. She stood there alone in the middle of the market, in the midst of a public humiliation orchestrated by the very children she loved more than life itself. Several days passed since the incident at the market. Amelia's name was no longer a topic of heated discussion. She had vanished like a leaf carried away by the wind. Some said they saw her wandering at dusk. Others claimed she never left her old house. But no one checked, except for Sarah, Richard's quiet wife. For months, Sarah had been visiting Amelia in secret. She would come in the early morning before her husband woke, bringing a little food, or simply sitting in silence with her. Sarah knew Richard would be furious if he found out. He had forbidden her from going near that woman. But Sarah no longer listened to such commands. She had seen something in Amelia's eyes that no one else wanted to see, a dignity that survived in a body shamed. That morning, Sarah arrived as usual, carrying a small bowl of porridge. "Amelia, it's me. I brought you some porridge." No answer. She placed the bowl on an old stool by the door and knocked lightly. "Amelia, are you sleeping?" Still silence. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then gently pushed the wooden door open. The sight inside made her freeze. Amelia was lying on the cold floor. Sarah stood still for a moment, then slowly approached. Amelia was dead. "Oh no," Sarah whispered. "No, not like this." When Leo and Chloe received the news, they showed no emotion. Not a word, not a frown. It was their Aunt Sarah who came to find them. She had them sit under the mango tree behind the house. "Your mother passed away alone," she said, her voice heavy with sadness, quietly, without a word of complaint, without a witness. Leo stared at the ground. Chloe hugged her arms tightly in silence. "Now that your mother is gone, there are things I can no longer keep to myself. I don't want to die with this burden." She looked directly into Leo's eyes. "I know you hated your mother. I'm not judging you, but she never said a single bad word about you. Even when she cried alone at night, she would tell me, 'My children are still alive, so I am still a mother.'" Then, her voice dropping, Sarah continued, "One day your mother told me everything, all the things you never knew." Leo looked up, his expression tense. "What do you mean?" "The day at Eleanor's house," Sarah said. "The day your mother was accused, the day you were thrown out. Your mother never willingly slept with that man. Never." Leo slowly raised his head, his thick eyebrows knitted into a straight line. Doubt and a faint flicker of hope warred in his eyes. Sarah continued, her voice steady, but each word heavy with meaning. "It wasn't your mother who went to him. It was him. It was Frank. From the very beginning, he was always trying to get close to her. He would corner her when she was alone in the kitchen, block her in the hallway. Your mother always tried to avoid him." She turned to look at Chloe, who was beginning to tremble. "Your mother kept quiet. Not because she was guilty, but because she had to feed you. She knew that if she said one word, that man would immediately throw all three of them out on the street." "But he paid for our school," Leo said weakly, trying to cling to his last piece of logic. "He gave us a place to live." "And that's what he used to control her," Sarah cut in. Your mother once cried and told me, "He gives me food, but he also eats away at my dignity. If I refuse, he'll call me ungrateful, and my children will be sleeping on the street again." Sarah wiped a tear that had rolled down her cheek. Do you think your mother was happy about that? She never wanted you to know because she loved you more than herself. She wanted to protect your innocent image of a just world. Chloe was now sobbing choked, silent sobs. Leo bowed his head, his worldview collapsing. But the shaman, he stammered, his voice breaking. He said, he saw visions. He said it was her. That she had cast a spell, that she had used my father's name. That it was because of her that my father died, and everything she touched fell to ruin. Sarah looked him straight in the eye, unflinching. Yes, I know what he told you. But did you ever ask yourselves who took you there, and why? Leo slowly lifted his head, a horrifying truth beginning to dawn on him. It was your Uncle Richard, Sarah said. He's the one who took you by the hand, who brought you to a shaman that only he knew. Don't you find that strange? He said it was to honor Dad, Chloe whispered through her tears. Sarah nodded slowly. Honor your father or slander your mother, he planted seeds of doubt into your grief. He spoke of curses of restless spirits, and when you were scared enough, he took you to someone who would say anything for money. She leaned forward, her voice now just a whisper. Leo, my nephew. When he talked about your mother, Richard never used her name. He only called her that woman, or the thing that killed my brother. But did he ever tell you what he wanted from your mother, even before your father married her? Both Leo and Chloe were stunned. Your Uncle Richard, Sarah said, her voice low. Before Michael and Amelia were married, he pursued your mother. But she rejected him. She chose his younger brother. And from that day on, he never forgave her. He saw your mother return alone, shamed, and he saw his chance for revenge. He orchestrated everything. He fed your suspicions. He took advantage of your pain, and you poor children walked right into his trap. Leo felt a wave of dizziness, as if the ground were cracking beneath his feet. Everything he had believed, all the indignation, all the hatred, had been built on a lie. So, I killed my mother. He whispered a statement that was not a question but a confession. Sarah stood up, walked over to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. No, Leo, you didn't kill her. It was the silence she was forced to carry that killed her. You were just the weapon they put in her hand. Chloe cried silently. As for Leo, he sat there motionless. But in his eyes, the fire of anger had been extinguished. All that remained was a vast, empty void. The kind of emptiness one feels upon realizing they've been fighting the wrong enemy their entire life. But that day, Leo and Chloe decided that the silence of others would not be their own. We're going to give Mom a funeral, Leo declared, his eyes burning with a new fire, a fire of repentance and resolve, a real funeral one worthy of her. On the day of the service, nearly the entire town showed up, partly out of curiosity, partly out of guilt. Richard came too, his face grim. You're wasting your energy, he told Leo curtly. You're doing this to atone, but it's too late. That woman didn't deserve any of this. She's the one who killed Michael, your father. Have you forgotten? Leo stood tall, facing his uncle. No, Uncle. What I forgot was to ask the right questions, but I'm starting to remember now. His voice rang out clear and strong, loud enough for those nearby to hear. You lied about my mother. You turned us against our own flesh and blood. You paid a shaman to slander her name. Richard's face went pale. She never defended herself. Leo continued, his voice trembling with emotion. She let us go. She accepted the slander, the humiliation and death, because she believed we deserved something better than hatred. And you, along with everyone else, let her die alone. Richard glared at Leo, but couldn't say a word. He knew he had lost. He turned and walked away silently. That day he understood that something had changed forever. When everyone had left, Leo and Chloe remained alone by the freshly dug grave. Leo knelt, his trembling hand touching the damp earth. "Mom, I'm sorry," he whispered, hot tears streaming down his cheeks. "I judged you with the eyes of a world that never understood women like you. Please forgive me, Mom." A mother's silence often conceals battles no one ever sees. But what she endures for her children deserves to be honored, not forgotten. One can never judge a heart whose beat they have never heard. The truth does not always scream. Sometimes it is silent and dies in silence.